I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is the first in our Talking Cyber webinar series. I'm your host, Charlie Wood, and head up the Contract Solutions division at Head Resourcing. For those who don't know us, we are a specialist IT, digital, data, and change recruitment agency, and I've been with the company for 19 years now. It's my pleasure to also introduce Jude McCorry, who will be delivering today's webinar on the cyber threat landscape in 2025, emerging risks and how to stay ahead. Now, Jude is the CEO of the Cyber and Fraud Centre Scotland, Scotland's only cyber social enterprise, and she's been there for the past 5 years, having taken up the role just after the start of the pandemic. Jude moved there from the data lab, where she was director of business development, working with both industry and academia to maximize the value of data for Scotland. I'm passionate about data for good and inspiring the next generation into the cyber and technology sectors. Jude's one of the founders of the UNICEF Data Hub for Children and also sits on the board of the Edinburgh Data-Driven Innovation Hub at Edinburgh University. Before I hand over to Jude, just a couple of housekeeping points to go through. So the session will last for approximately 45 minutes. We'll let everybody get their lunch. Jude will deliver her talk for about 30 to 35 minutes of those, and then we will have a brief Q&A session. Please use the Q&A box to ask any questions, and if you use the thumbs up icon to upvote the questions that you're most keen to hear the answer to, we'll focus on those at the end. Please also feel free to get involved by using the chat function, which should appear on the right-hand side. The recording of today's webinar will be available over the next few weeks on YouTube, and you should get a notification through. Now, lastly, before we jump into Jude's talk, let's get a sense of the sentiment in the virtual room with a couple of quick-fire polls. So you'll have 5 to 10 seconds to respond to each poll. So fingers on mice, please. So if we can queue up the first poll, do you currently have an instant response plan? So yes or no to that one. Do you currently have an instant response plan in your organization?
I don't know what
Grant?
happened there. Sorry.
It's okay. There was a poll that popped up there, Jude, so it stopped sharing the webinar. We'll get the polls out of the way and then reshare.
All right, because it
So,
knocked me off the webinar in total.
oh, did it? Oh, that's a first. Well, I'm glad you're back. So, we've got 67% saying yes, that they do have an incident response plan. So, of those people who answered yes, time for the next poll. So, how often do you test it? When was the last time you tested it? Was it tested within the last month, the last 3 months, the last 6 months, or last year or longer? So, has it been tested within the last month, last 3 months, last 6 months, or a year or more? So a year or longer for 40%, half of the people within the last 6 months, which is good. And then 10% of respondents within the last, within the last 3 months, and then half within the last 6 months. Excellent stuff. Grand, right. If you want to reshare, Jude.
The 10% who have got an instant response plan and have shared, you can drop off the call now because you're absolutely brilliant.
You're all over it.
The rest of you, you're staying.
Excellent stuff. Well, with the polls done, I'll hand you over to Jude, and you can take us through your presentation.
All right, I don't know what's... Okay, good afternoon, everybody. As I was introduced, I'm Jude McCorry. I'm the CEO from the Cyber and Fraud Centre. And today, I was supposed to concentrate on cyber risks of 2025. I'm not going to spend a whole half an hour telling you what the risks are, because judging if 67% of you have got an instant response plan, I think, that's a really great number. If we did this time last year, I don't think we'd have even 6%. So I do think you all have a good, healthy paranoia around what the risks are around around cyber security and cyber resilience itself. I will quickly go through the landscape at the moment because it is changing and it's ever evolving. And, over the last few weeks, what we've seen is huge risks coming in via the US because of the geopolitical issues. And one person who's now taken control, who has him and his other counterpart have disbanded quite a few of the US cyber agencies like CISA. They're looking at different areas within government. They're saying cybersecurity is not going to be, top of the list for the US. They're, ramping up conversations with Russia. So all of this has got people that look after threat intel and are threat hunters and everything, has got them on high alert over the last few weeks because this is when things can happen around cybersecurity, when the risk is increased and then the resilience is brought down. We as an organization, and probably the UK as well, we do depend on a lot of the intelligence coming out of the US. And if this is disbanded, these kind of things, then the risks are going to become more for us. And also the thing around Ukraine and Russia as well. So we really need people to step up and to be on guard over the next few months until hopefully common sense will prevail and cybersecurity will become top of the list for the US government again. The risks, the technical risks are probably the same as what they were 23, 24. So we're still looking at ransomware, we're still looking at DDoS attacks, we're still looking at business email compromise, and I would include that into a cyber threat as well, because even though it's not a cyber attack, it is somebody attacking you as an organization and doing some sort of CEO fraud, CEO impersonation, and trying to get money out of your organization, which can be just as harmful to organizations as a full-on ransomware attack, particularly if you're a small organization and somebody takes maybe 3 months of your rent supply or gets into your bank account and stuff as well. So please be aware of things like that. Ransomware is not the be all and end all of cyber attacks. And, please be aware that these things can happen. It's not if, it's when. So please be on alert for all of these things going forward. What I did think that we could use the time for is go through the NCSC board toolkit for, we call it our secure leaders, to make leaders like yourselves more secure in their organizations and make the organizations more secure in turn as well. So Gillian's going to put up a link onto the chat as well with the link to the NCSC, the whole toolkit itself that you can work around. I think we just looked at it, was 27 pages. I'm not going to go through 27 pages with you. What we're going to do is just chat through the highlights of what we think is important and to see if it's something then that you can embed into your organizations then as well. So we'll start with a few, what is secure leaders? So today, we're scene setting. We're talking about how to make the organizations more resilient. We'll go through the toolkit, show you what it looks like. We're going to look at creating the right environment and getting the right information to support decision making and taking steps to manage risks, and then the wrap up. Even attending the session today is taking a step to manage risks. You're taking time out of your busy day to think about cybersecurity, and that to us is a big win. That it's very difficult to get people to think and to talk about cybersecurity when they haven't had an attack. Usually when they've had an attack is when they start listening and they start talking about it. Or we used to call it the SEPA effect. So when SEPA was attacked, a lot of people listened to what was going on, then that went down, then there was Sam H, then there was Arnold Clark. So all of these companies, whenever they're attacked, it makes people more heightened in their awareness and start building their resilience. So it's great that there hasn't been a big attack in the last few weeks and you're here and you're joining the webinar today. So we've done the introductions. So what is cybersecurity? So there's a few different, different variations of what we would class cybersecurity to be. And probably the best ones is around the NCSC descriptions of it. So cybersecurity is how individuals and organizations reduce the risk of cyber attack. Cybersecurity's core function is to protect the devices we all use and the services we access, both online and at work, from theft or damage. And it's also about preventing unauthorized access to the vast amounts of personal information we store on these devices and online. And also probably, it's what the stuff that we store, but we are also looking for organizations to be the best custodians of our data. So the NHS, governments, we're looking at people like BA who've had an attack, Marks and Spencers, all of these things, people that we give our data to, we're hopefully thinking that these organizations are good custodians of what they hold on us and the information that they hold and share on a daily basis. What's the worst that can happen digitally to your organization? I want you to think about that, and I want you to bring that back into your organizations as well to say, what if we were attacked? What if we had a ransom attack on the organizations and all our systems went down? What's the worst thing that can happen? What kind of data can get maybe leaked on the dark web? What kind of data can these hackers access? What can people read about us in the dark web? How will, if are we a manufacturing organization, how do we start manufacturing again? Do we look after patients? Have we got patient data? Have we got sensitive data? Are we maybe an adoption agency? Anything like that. It's like, what is the worst thing digitally that can happen? And start working back from that to say, actually, this could be pretty catastrophic. We can't bury our head in the sand. And we have to make sure that we as an organization are doing every single thing that we can to protect the organizations against a cyber attack. Who is responsible for cybersecurity? And it's good that there are so many people on this call today, because you feel that everybody has a responsibility. But you've taken this time out today, and you're talking about, and you're going to listen, and you're also then going to go back and say, I'm responsible as a person for cybersecurity, and also responsibility for your own data, your own footprint online as well. So how can you start helping protect that as well? So if we're looking at who is responsible for cybersecurity, so we talk to the information commissioner who get involved into any big cyber attacks. That's another thing that you think about. What's the worst that can happen to your organization? You will probably get involved with the ICO, and it won't be a short-term process. It could go on for months or years, and they will, come back and they'll ask you all the questions and stuff. And you're trying to run your organization. Your core purpose might be to serve or to look after patients and stuff. Your core purpose is not to manage a ransomware attack. It is to look after the business that you were set up to do. And on top of that, then you also have to deal with the ICO, maybe some legal implications as well around it. So what they say is today's records fine acts as a warning to others that cybersecurity is not an IT issue. It's a boardroom issue. Companies must be diligent and vigilant, and they must do this not only because they have a duty under law, because they have a duty to their customers. So as I spoke earlier on about us expecting people to be good custodians of our data, our customers expect us to be, and the people that we deal with, they expect us to be the utmost best custodians of the data that they share with us as well. So that's their duty, and it is law. So it's not, when people say, oh, the ICO did this and the ICO did that. The ICO are there to uphold the law the same way as the police, the same way as other organizations. And their duty is around protecting people's data. And they will not leave any stone unturned to make sure that you have done that during any process you might be involved or engaged with them in. So how do we prevent this? How do we prevent our data or our company's data, organizational data getting out into the dark web? So there's, as I said, the NCSC board toolkit. It's a huge toolkit. We do offer half-day training or one-day training to organizations if they want to look at going through it with the board or with their senior teams. So we've got facilitators and some really good cyber people that can go out and talk about it, but also give real life examples as to where these have happened, the ransomware attacks or DDoS attacks, and how it has affected organizations in Scotland. So how it can help. So it enables board members to get just a little bit technical. We can't say, I'm not a technical person. We can't shrug our shoulders and say, that's not my job, that's IT's job. If you're on the board, you have a duty of care to protect the employees, to protect the organization. And it's good governance for you to be that little bit technical to understand what kind of questions you need to ask your teams about how well you are protected as an organization. Supporting board members in asking the right questions to gain assurance on cybersecurity. You might be a board member on this call today, and God help the people that you're on the board, because you will be going back and you will be asking the cyber questions. You will be saying, how are we doing this? Do we have a board? Do we have a board toolkit? Do we have an instant response plan? Have we checked it? When's the last time we exercised it? All that kind of stuff, which is really good. And that's what I would like from board members, to have this healthy and active paranoia around cybersecurity. Also encouraging crucial conversations to take place between the board and its key staff. So on our risk register, cyber will always be red. And one board member said to me, "Wait, how can we get this green?" I was like, "It's never going to be green. We have to keep it at red." It doesn't matter how much you spend on IT. It doesn't matter, what kind of training you do, exercise and everything. There is still that risk. You'll never be 100% safe. So you have to keep and get it on your risk register and keep it at red, but make sure that for every board meeting you're revisiting to make sure that you're doing everything you can to keep looking and to keep on top of what your cyber resilience looks like. So the board toolkit isn't a how-to guide. We're not telling you how to do things. It's not a checklist. It's not a tick box exercise. It is an active toolkit that we want you to try and work with in your organization. And it's not a manual telling you how to achieve a one-off task. It is a working document. And we're saying to people, keep it going. The same way as your incident response plan is a working document. Don't think because you've written an incident response plan and you have it somewhere safe, and I don't mean online safe, have it in paper format, because if you do have an incident response to work on, you probably won't have the IT equipment. So make sure you've got paper plans of your incident response plan as well. And it is always a working document. So this is what it is, quite government looking. So what we try and do is make it, when we're doing the training, we try and bring it down and break it down into biteable chunks that people can understand. So the first bit is around creating the right environment. So embed cybersecurity in your organization, develop positive cybersecurity culture, and grow cybersecurity expertise. So there's a few things there that I want to touch on. So the embedding cybersecurity in your organization, it's from the top down. So if your board are not interested in cybersecurity, then why should your staff be? And usually 97% of cyber attacks are caused by human error. But that doesn't mean then that we have to stand with a stick over people. Whereas in the second point, we're saying develop a positive cybersecurity culture. How can you have, we call it maybe cyber propaganda, never mind the culture, that you're regularly feeding maybe some news headlines, maybe some things that you've spotted online about cybersecurity. It could be some information about some ransomware gangs, something that's always been bled into the organization to make sure that everything underpinning is that the people, when they get in the morning, they do think, I do have to protect the organization from a cyber attack. And also grow your cyber security expertise. So do you have people? So I'm not saying even you're in technical expertise, but there are things like exercising. We do at the Cyber and Fraud Centre once a month, we do cyber bites. So it's a lunchtime session like this, and all different topics are covered. So you could say to your staff, I want 5 people to go on this, or I want 3 people to go in and come back and deliver it to the staff. Or you could have pizza for lunch and say to people, we're putting this on in the boardroom. You basically can watch the webinar from the boardroom. We want you to do this hour of cybersecurity training each month, and pick the topics that you think, or people let them pick themselves and what they think and what you're looking for as cyber champions within the organization. Get the right information to make and support decision making. So we're on to point number 2 now. Identify the critical assets in your organization. So what are the bits that you wouldn't want to see on the dark web? What are the bits that are valuable? What are the bits that the ransomware gangs will turn around and say to you, I have X amount of terabytes of data or gigabytes of data. What are the bits that you wouldn't want people to be looking about on the dark web, or people selling to other criminal agencies as well, that could be used for fraud? So if you're a legal organization, for example, you don't want wills and testaments of your clients out on the dark web. We've seen fraud happen from that, when there's been like high net worth, maybe some wills and testaments, high net worth individuals, wills and testaments online, and they've been sold to criminal agencies, and they have details of bank account details. So if you died, how your money can be accessed. And these criminal agencies will prey on older people, and they will say, they were calling from the bank, we think you should transfer your money into X, Y, and Z because it's a higher rate of interest, or you should invest in gold. And we've seen huge gold scams as well on the back of some ransomware attacks of information that's sold on the dark web. So it doesn't just mean that your business is going to come down. It means that this affects people that deal with you on a daily basis, could affect them for years to come, and could put them at risk of losing everything that they've got as well. So what are your critical assets? And also, what are your critical assets that you need to continue on with your business? You need, if you've had a cyber attack, can you keep the show on the road? So if you're maybe a gin distillery and you maybe bottle 10,000 bottles of gin every week, your systems will be connected to your IT systems, or your assembly line. If that goes down, you're not going to be able to maybe bottle some gin and supply gin maybe for a month, a week, 2 weeks, or whatever. How will that affect you? How will that affect cash flow? How will it affect paying the wages? How will it affect supply and demand, all that kind of stuff as well. So please have a look and have a think about what would happen if you had this cyber attack, and understand the cybersecurity threat. What I spoke about earlier on, like the geopolitical side of things, how normal organizations don't really have to think about that, but people in finance, people, all different organizations, they have to look at the daily threat alerts. And what we do at the centre as well, for all of our members, we do a weekly threat alert bulletin that covers cybersecurity and also fraud as well, because we can then say, and if there's things that we know that there's threats or there's different things that you should be doing with your systems, that will be outlined on a weekly basis. And you should do those patch updates. You should do, getting rid of different things that might cause problems and stuff, or just be alert that this type of ransomware or this gang is quite prolific. And this, it could be housing associations one week that have been targeted. There could be a pattern of legal companies, all that kind of stuff. And we'll know that from the calls that we're getting and also the intelligence we get from Police Scotland, from the FBI, and from other law enforcements as well around the world. So we're gathering it. And what we can do then is share it with people out there as well. Some of it may not be relevant. Some of it might be very highbrow for smaller organizations. But if it is relevant to any of the organizations in Scotland, we do message it out. So using the information to evaluate and prioritize the risks. So are you in a high risk area that, ransomware is happening? What can you do to prioritize? And also, I would say prioritize at different times of the year. What we see the ransomware attacks happening is around Christmas, Easter, bank holidays, Friday afternoons, when people think that organizations are off guard and, it's like pens down, laptops down, and it's like, oh, people are just kind of taking a break, and then they get in and they think that they can do whatever they want within your system. So prioritize before you go on holidays, before you go on Easter break, before Good Friday comes. Have a think about and saying, right, what would happen if we had an attack over the weekend, or what can we do to basically make sure that we're more resilient this weekend than we have been over the last few years. Step 3, taking steps to manage those risks. So implement effective cybersecurity measures. So look at your training, look at what kind of access you give people, look at having 2-factor authentication, password protection. What is a good password? We use passphrases, or we use other different ways of, it shouldn't be about, people say to me, oh, my password is password 123, or we've seen different government agencies with the passwords hung up at the back when they were doing webinars over COVID and stuff as well. So things like that, make sure you've got effective cybersecurity measures, and very basic things can be done to make huge impact within the organization. Collaborate with your supply chain partners, because it's not just you that's at risk. So people that you have access to, if they had a cyber attack, how would that affect you? So if you could be, let's say, like drinks industry again, maybe a haulage company or somebody that's your supplier had an attack, that could get into your systems and then bring you down as well. So make sure that your supply chain partners ask for, when you're going out to tender for organizations, ask people if they have IASME certification, ask them if they, what kind of training they've got, what do they do as an organization to protect themselves for cyber resilience, because you want to make sure that you're buying from somebody that takes cybersecurity as seriously as you do. And then the last point, which is a huge point, is plan your response to cyber incidents. We started that on the call today. We started with that question today. What do what kind of cyber, do you have a cyber incident response plan? And that's great. And then that 10% of you have tested it over the last 3 months. That number needs to be higher, but I'm not going to say that's it needs to be at 80%, because I think we're making really great progress that even 67% of people have an incident response plan. If you don't have an incident response plan, we have templates, a 3-page template. We also help larger organizations to build out huge incident response plans that have got everything. It could be government agencies and stuff that need to have bigger than, but I would say to people, start with something, the 3-page one, and also then sit down with your team, talk to them that they can understand, plan it, pretend you've got an incident, do some sort of scenario, and how would you work that back within the organization. and make sure, as I said, everybody's got people that need to have a paper copy of that incident response plan, that they have that and they have it in a safe place. There's no, sometimes we do incident response plan and they're going, right, we'll print off the incident response plan. Well, you can't if your systems are down, and then you don't have people's telephone numbers, you don't have people's how to contact people, you don't have the name of your cyber insurance or maybe the number of your cyber insurance company, your contacts. Do you have an incident response partner as well? So IT companies are very different to proper incident response organizations. And we have, if there's a list, if there's people wanting to sort out an incident response partner or have a retainer, we've got our trusted partners list that if people call us into the incident response line, we provide them with a list of organizations that they can get incident response support from. But what we're saying to people is don't leave it until you've had an incident. Make sure you've got your legal support, make sure you've got your incident response, and make sure that you've got your incident response plan at hand, and that you can hit the ground running on the incident. Arnold Clark will talk about their incident. They had an incident response plan. They looked at it. It was out of date. Eddie says he ripped it up in the space of 5 minutes. They didn't have an incident response company, and trying to get an incident response company on Christmas Eve and an incident response company that can understand an organization the size of Arnold Clark is quite difficult. What you want is to have those conversations, and for the incident response company to understand you as an organization, what risk you carry, and what kind of critical systems you have, so that they can then go, they've had an incident, here's the things that they need to get sorted out straight away, backups, all that kind of stuff as well. Create the right environment. So embed cybersecurity in your organization. Again, it's that healthy culture, the healthy paranoia, the propaganda, and develop a positive cybersecurity culture and grow. Oh, that's number one. Why is that going again? Creating the right environment. We've done that. Basically, what we're also saying to people, don't beat people up. If there is a cyber attack in your organization, please don't come back looking for who caused it, what happened, because what that will do is drive people underground. So if they do click on something, they're never going to put their hand up and say, I did that. What you want is if somebody said, I clicked something, I don't know if it's something I shouldn't have clicked on, and they report it straight away so that people can start remediating on what has happened, or basically check, and it might not be anything. You want this positive culture for the organization, and to make sure that people are reporting it. Also, simulating phishing attacks. So, send out some phishing emails to people to see if they would click on it. And usually it's things like, if it sounds too good to be true, that's what we say to people. Sometimes they will click on it going, I'm getting free Disney or I'm getting free Sky for a month. And they click on it, and then it's basically a malware downloaded onto the machine. You can bring your own simulations and work with an IT company to do that, so that you can then test to see if, would people click on these links. And people come back and go, oh, well, only 60% clicked or 30% clicked on it. I wouldn't congratulate yourself on 30%. I wouldn't even congratulate yourself on only 2 people. It only takes one person to bring the whole organization down. So the more you can do to re-emphasize that culture and say to people to make sure that they are the people that they could bring down the organization, and also talk to them about what does that mean? What does bringing down the organization, what does a cyber attack look like for the organization? For Arnold Clark, it was that they couldn't get into any systems, they'd no phone systems. They didn't know what cars they had to sell. They didn't know who had bought cars. They didn't know what cars were coming in for an MOT. They didn't know what cars had to go out. All that kind of stuff. Can your organization go back to pen and paper as well after a ransomware attack? I'm just going to skip through these because we've already covered all of these, and then we're not having a break. Sorry. I think I've attached the wrong slides to this one. I was panicking the last one. So we'll go through planning your response to cyber incidents. So, and that is part of building the incident response plan as well. So it's not when, it's not if, it's when. And basically for you to plan the response, understand the roles in incident management, including that of the board, practice incident response, and learn from exercises and learn from incidents. Listen to case studies. So if you ever get the chance to hear Eddie Hawthorne from Arnold Clark, Zibby, I think, is going to be on one of these. So he wasn't there at the time. He always makes sure that people know that he wasn't the CISO at the time. But I'm sure he knows everything that went on during the incident, and he'll be able to share with you what happened, the learnings, and also the difficulties 2 years down the line of, they're still coming to grips with different things. And it's, as Eddie calls it, the gift that keeps on giving. So you don't want a gift like a cyber incident to come and to keep giving you gifts back. So I'm going to do some signposting now. I think we've covered, there's probably been a bit. So I say this is usually a half a day of training that we do with organizations, and hopefully it's given you an overview. And then you can download the toolkit yourself, and you can, pick out the bits that you think you need to look at. You're not going to get it all done in 1 week. It's going to be put together a strategy around it, put together some training behind it. And there's lots of free resourcing and resources on our website and the Cyber and Fraud Centre. And also there's things like, I'll just go through. So Cyber Scotland, there's a website there. The NCSC website is really good as well. Have a look at all the different resources that's out there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. The other thing, if you find yourself that you do have an incident in the organization, we have a free telephone line, and there is no cost to get support for this. We've had lots of calls over the last few years. So we've helped with SEPA, we've helped Arnold Clark, we've helped Western Isles, all the big organizations that have had ransomware attacks, but also the smaller organizations that you won't hear about in the press, because people don't normally talk about the incidents. And that's what's really good about the likes of Arnold Clark and Western Isles and stuff, that they have been open about it so people can learn from it. So the telephone number is there. It's also on our website as well. So even if it's just a question and you're slightly concerned, you might not think it's, there is no such thing as a stupid question. Call us and we'll help. We've got Norman, we've got Alex, we've got people that used to work, the two of them have worked for Police Scotland, and we've got a group of ethical hackers as well. So we're here and we can help anything, anytime. So please reach out to us. I'm on LinkedIn. I can also send you my email address. So there is no such thing as a stupid question. I will end on that, because we want people to be as cyber resilient, and we want you to help us to get Scotland as resilient as possible. So I'm going to stop now. We have some services as well that we can help with, and that's just on that last slide you can have a look at as well. And if there's any questions that we want to go through.
Thanks for that, Jude. That was excellent. There are a couple of questions. Are you seeing more companies having cyber experts as part of their boards? So are you seeing more cyber experts coming on as non-execs advisors rather than just upskilling existing boards?
So I've actually seen the first role, and it's actually outside of this country, for a public sector. It's in Ireland, and it's a public sector role, and it's part of their risk governance board, and it is specifically around cybersecurity, which I think is fantastic that they are taking. It's not cybersecurity. Sometimes we don't even see it on boards papers. We don't see it discussed at boards. But now if people are going to go down that way and they're going to have somebody that's totally just for the cyber risk of the organization, I think that is amazing. And it's a big step for organizations to look at that.
Yeah, given the threats that are out there,
yeah.
I think it is becoming more of a priority for boards, and they're beginning to realize that the organization depends on it. So, okay, that's brilliant. And what's the biggest tip you can give to organizations when tackling how to improve cyber culture?
Make it fun. And I know cyber is not that fun. You probably have had the least amount of fun today for the last half an hour.
Not at all. No, it's been great.
Try and make it fun. We delivered cyber exercising. So, and again, that's I don't know if it's still on the NCSC website. I think they shelved it, but we've got stuff that we can send to organizations as well. So you can get a team of people together and you just come up with a scenario and you work it back. And people get really interested because they're kind of going, no, I never even thought that this would happen. Again, reenacting and also what you see then is the resilience of the organizations as well. They're not just looking at the cyber attack. They're looking at how then would we, how do we start invoicing? How do we start selling what we do? How do we start supporting people? So you can see this kind of going, it's like, here's war, we're at war now. We're just going to bring the organization back to it. And that's really good to see that it's not just about the cyber resilience, it's keeping the show on the road
Yeah.
and keeping the employees and keeping the organization going. Because if you don't have that, you're not going to have an organization, they're not going to have jobs. Another person who talks really well about it is Scullion Law, Nicholas Scullion. They're a legal company that were hit this time last year. And he said he thought that they would go under on the back of it. But he
Wow.
said, when he looks back to, and I've seen him, I've spoken to him during the attack, I've spoken to him 3 months, 4 months after the attack. And you can now he's like, oh, it gave us energy, it gave us resilience. I was like, you weren't too energetic and resilient during it. But they were such a great company to work with because they were doing everything that they could possibly do. And he was like, it's amazing what people will pull out to. It's like COVID, we all got on with that. We just did it. But we don't want people to have to do this because it's draining on organizations to try and hold an organization together, and particularly CEOs and boards. You have to keep the troops going, keep momentum going, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, see how you would operate if it did happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Um, so there's a few more questions that have come in. Let me just
Okay.
go through them. Um, are there any recommended cyber training resources you can suggest? So I think you mentioned a couple already that organizations can use, but in terms of cyber training itself, any that you've used in the past or that you would recommend to people?
So is it technical training or organizational training?
I'm guessing it's organizational training, but it could
Organizational
be
training.
both,
Okay.
occupational or otherwise. Yeah.
So there's lots of things online, and I said we try and we're a social enterprise. We try and make cybersecurity as affordable as possible, and at that we try and do things as much as we can for free. So we do the monthly sessions. We also have meetups as well. I can't remember what the next one. I think it's on supply chain is the next one. And the other thing is that we do as part of our membership, and I'm not trying to sell anything here, but you do get an hour of training for your staff. And also we do have different things that organizations can come in and get their board trained, starting with their teams, everybody in the organization. So there's different, what are you trying to do? Is it just a blanket approach around cybersecurity and start it that way and break it down into the board? Start doing maybe some exercising around if you did instant response, testing your instant response plan as well. We could come in and pretend there's an incident, a 0-day thing, watch then how the organization could manage that as an incident. I would, there's lots out there. What you want to do is make it as interesting as possible as well. It's not one of these things when you join, people say to me in the organization, you haven't done your last 3 weeks of cyber training, and it's like this tick box exercise, and I'm going, yeah,
Yeah.
I need to lead by example. But the best ones are when you get a group of people together in it and you talk about who these ransom gangs were, who are Conti, who are these people. They're not one person sitting in the basement of a house or some young guy. These are serious and organized criminals. So this is a criminal underworld. These are people that are coming in and they're operating in Scotland because they are attacking Scottish businesses. And then if they do get paid the ransom, they're using that money then as well to fuel other crime. Like we've
Yeah.
seen the crypto gangs been taken down before Christmas, and it was Kinahans for drugs, it was people trafficking. All that money is fueled via things like this. So we need to look at the serious side of it as well. And I think people who want to understand cyber more really, I'm saying they really enjoy it, but I do. I like learning about these guys who are earning millions and driving around tracks and stuff. But they might be doing this, but all they can do is stay in Russia. They're going to be arrested at some stage, and they're all related. So you can see all these oligarchs and stuff as well.
Fascinating. Yeah. Yeah, I'm quite intrigued by that side of it as well. We've got time for a couple more. One of the questions that stood out was how many companies go public when they have an attack. So we were aware of some of the big attacks that have
Yeah.
happened in Scotland, but are there lots more who don't want to share what's happening to them? And why do they take that position?
So I would say there's more that don't go public than do, and mostly the ones that go public are public sector because when an attack has happened because it's usually a service. So
Yeah,
it's like you can't really deny that you've had a cyber attack. There's also a lot of organizations that don't pay the ransom. So they would be like, no, we'll get through, but they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about it for, and I totally understand that, for reputational damage, because if you think that this is really bad, and it is, it's victim language. It's the same if you were mugged on a street, you feel that you have done something to deserve that. And I think that's
Yeah.
where a lot of organizations do it. But we're saying, no, you're the victim of a crime. It's like somebody robbing your house. Somebody came in without authorization and they've broken into your organization. Um, and also, if you were a victim of a mugging on a street or a robbery, you would be offered victim support. We're not very good at looking after victims. So organizations are trying to manage all that. And then the press don't help either, because, and there are some really good people that will help and put the positives around something that's very negative in the press, but there are others that just love a good cyber story and they love to catastrophize about, oh, there's going to be X amount of data, like the time of the Dumfries and Galloway attack, everybody's health data is going to be out there. In fairness, not many people are interested in the health data of, and it didn't. The same in Australia, all
Yeah.
of their health data was leaked onto the dark web, and that should be illegal because you wouldn't sell somebody's medical records and stuff. But yet they're able to transfer stuff on the dark web that's electronic. But there's so many reasons why they wouldn't. And when they do go public, it actually, you see Eddie from Arnold Clark, he's going, I'm a car salesman, dude. I'm not a cyber guru. But he turns into that because people really want to hear those stories and learn
Yeah.
from them. And I applaud organizations who do that, because they've been through an attack. So they've spent so much money trying to do this. And he's still given up his time to help organizations to prevent what has happened to them and to talk them through what, the different things that they would have done very differently for preparing for it, and also during the incident as well. So there's huge amounts of reasons why they don't want to do it. It's a dirty word, it's a crime, and people don't want to talk about it. And then there's also organizations who choose to pay the ransom because they don't really understand what a cyber attack is. So they're not, and it could be small organizations that are like, and I'm not going to generalize on it, it could be big organizations pay ransom as well, let's be honest, but small organizations, it could be a small ransom demand. So they're going, actually, I'm going to get my data back, and all I have to do is pay £5,000 in crypto. So I'll pay the £5,000 in crypto. And also, sometimes if you've got cyber insurance, your cyber insurance will pay the ransom money for you, that amount. And they'll also encourage you not to speak about it. They'll tell you not to speak about it. So lawyers get involved, all that kind of stuff as well. So so we have to be mindful. They're not bad people if they don't speak about it. Because A, they probably don't have the time. B, there's so much demand on their time during an attack. And C, they don't want people seeing them as the organization that have had a cyber attack.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. There's a lot of psychology behind it
Yeah.
that
You have to
affects
respect that from
organizations.
people. Yeah, I can't say, well, you should talk about that. I'm just delighted when people go, when I'm through this, and that's what I say to the press, leave the organizations alone, give them the space. And if they want to talk about it, they will come back and talk about it. So when an organization says, what I will do after this, I'll come out and talk about it, I'm like, brilliant, I'll hold you to that.
Yes, and it's massively beneficial for the rest of
Yeah,
us
for
when they do,
everybody.
because we can learn
Yeah.
from it. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, that is us at time. Thank you so much for that, Jude. Massive thank you to everybody for attending, and to Jude for sharing her insights and knowledge on the topic. And thanks for joining the first of our cyber webinars today. The next one takes place in 2 weeks. So Wednesday, the 2nd of April, and our guest speaker is Richard Gentile, Principal Consultant with PA Consulting. So Richard will be talking to us about AI, cyber, and data, specifically the impact of AI in the fraud arena. You can get signed up today, and Gillian has popped the link in the chat. Thank you very much, all. Thanks again, Jude, and
Okay.
enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Cheers, now.
Bye.